International Recruiting Officer for Racing Victoria, Leigh Jordan. Leigh, what do you make of today's nominations for the upcoming Melbourne Spring Racing Carnival?
Yeah, I think the Cox Plate and the Caulfield Cup are very strong entries. I think the Caulfield Cup now is becoming a race that is being specifically targeted by the internationals, and I think separation of the closing date from the Melbourne Cup enables that to happen, as well as, the race is worth $2.5 million. With the strength of our Australian dollar, that's something that the international owners and trainers just can't ignore. And we've got American, Dunedin, Red Cadeau in the race, but there's some horses like Sri Putra, trained by Roger Varian, Gatewood, John Gosden, Quest for Peace, Luca Kamani, Prairie Star, John Hammond, that are looking at specifically aiming at the race. So I think that's probably going to happen over the next few years. There's just going to be a change of the way trainers and owners perceive the Caulfield Cup.
You touched on the Cox Plate. Who are some of the horses that we've got currently that could possibly be coming for the Sporting Bet Cox Plate this year?
Cox Plate, again, entries are up and very strong. Planteur, that was one of the invited runners, has nominated, and he's shown a lot of interest in coming. He ran third in the Dubai World Cup earlier in the year. There's a horse called Reliable Man, trained by Alain Roy de Prey. He won the French Derby last year, and he recently ran fourth in the King George behind Daydream, so he's a very quality animal. There's horses like Master of Hounds, previously trained by Mike de Kock, now trained by William Haggis. He won a Group 1 in Dubai earlier this year, ran fourth in the Kentucky Derby. Side Glance ran third in the Queen Anne behind Frankel, owned by Sheikh Fahd El Thani, the same owner as Dunedin. So there's a good quality nominations this year. Again, I think the Cox Plate hasn't had many international runners over the last few years. The club has to be applauded by bringing this invitation process in. They need to do it to compete against the other races offered around the world. And I think, again, we'll see some more international runners in the Cox Plate.
Do you find is it the timing that presents some sort of trouble for the Cox Plate, clashing against the Breeders' Cup in the US or whatnot?
Yeah, it does. There's a new race meeting now at Ascot called Champions Day, and they've got a race exactly the same, which is 2 weeks before it, for big prize money. There's the Arc, there's the Breeders' Cup, Japan Cup. I know the Hong Kong International a little bit later on, but there's all similar races. And the thing is, when horses are travelling to those countries, they only need to do a 7-day quarantine. When they're coming here, they're doing nearly 6 weeks and flying, 30 hours plus. So it's a big ask. So they really need to offer these incentive packages to at least to try and put them on a level playing field.
And what about the big one, the Melbourne Cup this year? What are some of the key nominations you think that you've spent your time trying to recruit for this year's Melbourne Cup?
I think obviously we're looking at horses like Red Cadeau, Dunedin, American again coming back. But I'm sure there is a lot of other horses on the way up in France, particularly. Marco Botti will be out here for the first time with a horse called Jackleberry. So I'm looking at some new trainers who've never been here, like John Gosden with a horse with Gatewood. So hopefully we can get, as well as the tried and true proven ones, some other ones coming through. Luca Kamani, obviously, has been a repeat visitor here. He's got a horse called Mount Athos that I'm really keen on. He just needs to get up in the weights a little bit. He's starting in the next few weeks, but I really like that horse. But gee, the inquiry on the Melbourne Cup has been probably the biggest I've ever seen this year. The race is worth $6 million. It's a 2-mile handicap. It's a unique race, and I'm sure we'll get strong representation again.
Is there any horses coming over for the spring from Hong Kong or Japan this year?
No, I suppose that's probably a little bit something that we lacked this year. We had John Moore with the extension that was going to come for the Cox Plate. The owners decided they want to stay in Hong Kong and target the International Day. He was our major horse from Hong Kong, so that's been a bit of a blow. Japan, we haven't had a Japan runner for the last couple of years, and again we're struggling to get a nomination for the Caulfield Cup. We may get one for the Melbourne Cup. The problem is with Japan, the quarantine centre in Japan, their travel arrangements are still becoming a little bit of a barrier for them, and it's something I'm personally going to have to work on over the next year.